Hello, everyone. I am Moy Steigman, the Mindful Rabbi, and I am here with my new-ish and now dear-ish friend, Yonat Piva. For those of you who have never seen a live stream conversation before, through my organization, Own Your Judaism, OYJ sponsors live stream conversations, where I get the wonderful joy and privilege of talking with people about ways that they have incorporated Judaism into their lives and effectively take ownership over their Jewish life and Jewish journey. Usually we schedule live stream conversations in advance. You know about them in advance. Yonat is here because on Sunday, August 4th, at I think 7 p.m., we are doing something called Songs for Peace. Yonat, among other things, is a singer and songwriter, and she's going to be playing some original music, lots of wonderful music, all embodying peace, especially with, in particular, an eye toward everything going on in the Middle East. And I am going to be facilitating and helping to create some space for people to offer any prayer or blessing or wishes that they have for peace as well. So she's here because she was going to record a song. I was going to give a prayer, and that was going to be a little bit of a preview and a prime the pump for the evening. And then we, as we often do, just started talking about Israel, Zionism, life, and peace. So this is our first impromptu in that we're just doing it without no set time, no set anything. And we're going to see how it goes. So thank you all for joining. And this might come out in a more polished form another time. And it also might not, because I've never done video editing before. All right. So Yonat, thanks so much for joining for this this wonderful, important, and impromptu conversation.
Yes. You're welcome.
So I have a couple questions, if it's okay. And then we'd love to hear a song or two. And then maybe we'll offer a prayer for peace. So you've done a couple of songs for peace before. And I should say, actually, I'm a hair nervous too, because in many ways, Israel has been the third rail in Judaism for a generation. I've been talking about that for a long time. And certainly after October 7th, we see that there's just so much more entrenchment, so much more emotion. You and I have talked, and in a lot of ways we see eye to eye, and in some ways we don't necessarily see eye to eye. But one thing I appreciate is that we can still hold space for each other and still hopefully value the conversation, both when we see things eye to eye and not. I guess I need to say that at the beginning now, and I'm excited and a little nervous for where the conversation goes, because it is unscripted. So Songs for Peace, where did this idea come from? I know you've done a couple already.
Where? Well, my family and I have become a little bit more active than I had been in the last few months in some of the movement, and I've been just grappling with my personal history as a Jewish person raised in Milwaukee, and as a person that made Aliyah at a young age, and then made Aliyah again at an older age, and served in the Israeli army, and was really a very strong Zionist without really having any other option most of my childhood. And then I left Israel. I lived there for quite a long time. Then I left there in my early 20s and really would just go visit. But then now that this war has started, it just feels like my friends and my family have been in danger. And then outside of that, seeing what has been going on in Gaza and the destruction that's been happening, it's been really heart-wrenching for me. And I've been grappling with my own identity as a Jew and as a Zionist for, these months, and I couldn't really find my voice. There was one song that kind of came out that I wrote and put on Facebook like right away around maybe in November or December. But that was it, and there's just been this stirring in me of like, I want to be in groups and be more not alone with all of these feelings. And so that's where, and being on stage is like very comforting for me. Actually, I found that I couldn't really articulate a lot of things in that first performance. my sister reflected to me afterwards, like, you sounded so clear that night on the stage. Like, a lot of things that I have been feeling, I was able to say, you know, in a room full of people that were supportive. So it's kind of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
To process like who I am and how I am, it comes through music. So that's how I do it.
That's amazing. I know a lot of people, the thought of being on stage would make them, you know, want to just run into a wall head first.
Yeah.
But for you, it sounds like that's a space where you feel comfortable, where you feel safe, and where you're really able to give voice. Were you ultimately able to find groups or small groups of people to sit and have conversations with, or is that still a work in progress at best?
I mean, one is just life. You know, life gets in the way. There's a lot of obligations and responsibilities, and making time for that is hard. But then I find that even when I'm with small groups of friends or this or that, people, it's hard to talk about it. You know, it's hard for people who are not Jewish and are not kind of like in that world. And I think it's even harder for those that are, and especially when there might be like differences in you know, political views or views. Like, it's very, very hard, and it feels like the conversation could go on for ages. So you're just trying to fit it into these small boxes of time that you have, you know. I think it's hard.
You know, I think we're just in life in general, we're not always trained to have difficult conversations in general. Absolutely. And I think we're getting better and better at, you know, purposeful listening, conscious listening, where I'm able to at least hear what you say and then mirror back, which is very different from trying to internalize where you're coming from, what your story is, what your perspective is, and then try to find common values. We're just not particularly trained at doing that in the best of times. And I don't want to suggest post-October 7th is the worst of times. And it's certainly a traumatic time for a great number of people with multiple faith practices and backgrounds. So I think that, I don't want to speak for you, I would suspect that's part of why it's been harder to find groups, because we just don't even know how to talk in general in such painful situations, and especially when it's so personal. It's
so personal. It's it's like, so I'm a psychotherapist, as you know, but now you know too. So I listen to stories all the time. That's my training, is to really hold space for all of that. But when I'm holding like basically an identity crisis of my own, which then has to do with a political and a violent situation, you know, some of my friends in the community have been like, oh, there's all these support groups where you can, not support groups, but even therapist groups and facilitators that are offering these free spaces, but like, you have to trust that. You have to like, you know, make time and go and sit with someone that's a stranger to you, and kind of, it's a lot. I try to talk with my own therapist about some of the things. And what's interesting about that is that you really don't know your therapist. You have no idea. Like, I mean, my therapist is a stranger, really, and I don't want to know her personally.
Right.
But I know that I'm kind of almost talking into my own void, because she's just there to reflect like what I'm experiencing. She's not really my community.
Right.
So I am trying to do my own personal work, but I'm not yet engaged like in a communal way. I don't know if anybody, like, maybe some people are more than others, but it's hard.
And I think our first conversation came because, you know, we know that social media has a lot of wonderful benefits, like being able to do live stream conversations. And we know that a lot of times it's not always the healthiest space for dialogue, but I know you've put some of your thoughts and reflections out on your personal Facebook posts. And I just remember gravitating not only to what you were expressing, but also the way that you were expressing it. So I don't remember when it was, but I reached out to you, and then we've talked a few times. And then when you shared this idea of Songs for Peace, I mean, it seems like such a beautiful way for people to be able to find a space to, I don't want to say do something, but to do something, right? It's like, I have this voice, I have this energy, I have this call to participate in a conversation. I don't know who to do it with. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I trust myself to say. And I'm really hopeful that this is a space where we can be present together. We can hear beautiful music. You'll get a preview very, very, very shortly. Hear beautiful music, and then hopefully just give voice to, we all have prayers for peace within us, right? And how do we want to express that, and where do we feel comfortable doing it? So I think that's my hope.
Yeah, no, I want to say, like, one of the things that I grapple with and that I look to you as a rabbi for, and more of the Jewish community, is that so much of our culture and so much of my upbringing was about shalom, 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 peace, all of this. But then at the same time, when being in Israel, there's this like militarized nationalist state that, like, in my performances, I've been like explaining and translating these songs for the audience, which has been a lot of non-Jews, so they wouldn't understand, the Hebrew, but it's like, I'm saying, like, listen to this amazing prayer for peace. It's sung by the Israeli military, and it's sung almost as a call to war. Not really, but like, you could almost, that's what I'm really grappling with, is that as an Israeli, I think, and especially as a child, the prayers for peace were put in the context of a militarized mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just completely confused.
There's a dissonance there.
There's a total dissonance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't start with the idea. I'm actually Israeli too. I don't know if you did. Yeah. I don't know if I shared that when we talked before, but for the same way you are, right? Like my parents have Israeli citizenship. Mm-hmm. So even though I was born here, I'm Israeli too. But I did not serve in the idea if I had not served in the military. I don't know if the kind of songs for peace when you're in the military are, Im Tirtzu Enzo Agada, if it's this kind of dream or wish. I don't know if it's a kind of painful irony. I don't know where it comes from or what the genesis is.
Well, I think it definitely comes out of Judaism. Like, mm-hmm. That's what Israel is at this point. It's like a Jewish nationalist problem. Sorry, but I think it is. And that's why I say I turn toward the rabbis and the teachings of Judaism, because I'm like, something doesn't click. Mm-hmm. Like, how can we have this hopeful desire for peace, but then be like donning these uniforms and carrying around these M16s, at age 18 and rallying for violence. Like, and then I think as a child and even as a soldier, like, I did not have the education to understand what really was being done in our name. Mm-hmm. And that still is being done in our name. And I don't think that all Jews should leave Israel, and I don't think that even that Israel shouldn't be a state or something, but I think that there's like a disease process from some of the nationalist kind of mentality that has turned to make this place so militarized, and that people in the hundreds of thousands are like suffering because of that ideology. Mm-hmm. But I want to separate that from Judaism and from the prayers for peace. It's very hard when you're raised for decades on the Zionist Judaism. I don't know. I'm a little bit lost.
I think but in large part, I think you're giving voice. That last thing, I'm a little bit lost, I think, is where so many Jews find themselves, right? And they could be Jews who agree with you and feel in the same lost space. They could be there. I'm sure there are people who are going to listen or watch who might feel entirely differently from where you're coming from, and also feel lost, because the idea of having an army is not necessarily an anti-Jewish concept.
Yeah.
Right. The idea of needing to engage in warfare isn't necessarily an anti-Jewish concept, and it's not necessarily an this is the universe in which we live concept.
Right.
And the aspiration and hope that we never need one or never need to use it if we have it is certainly not an anti-Jewish concept. And at the best of times, we're able to somehow hold space for both of those. And in the really traumatic and painful times, it's very hard to hold both together. And then I think we often find ourselves pulled to one side or the other. So let's pull ourselves a little bit to the...
Let's sing so we don't have to...
Yeah, well, that's okay. let's pull ourselves a little bit to the side of each one of us, I'm sure, or I would like to believe, but I'm sure has a clarion call that we want peace for ourselves, for other people. We don't want peace to come at other people's deep expense. We learned that throughout Jewish history too. That's why we take the grape juice or the wine out of the cup at the Seder. So let's transition into a little bit of giving space and voice for our peaceful hopes, our peaceful aspirations, hopefully dreams that become a reality.
I think I'm going to play that same song.
Great.
Because like I was saying to you, my personal music hasn't usually been written around political or social issues. It's been more personal, but I think that I've been grappling for a long time with my own like pacifist identity and then soldier identity. And that started, really in high school when I was like a pacifist. Then I like enlisted in the Israeli army, and people would look at me, Israelis would look at me like, what the heck? This is really weird. You're this American, pacifist singing, blowing in the wind or whatever. But so it's been, I think, an identity crisis for a long time. Anyway, so this song.
And this is an original.
This is the original. All right, let me just sing and then we'll talk about it.
Please.
I'm not gonna fight for love no more, no. Trading in our weapons of war. Never been a heart that's felt so sure. Here he comes and knocking at my door, yeah. Beating down my swords into guitar. Leave behind my bruises and my scars. All that's left here is my bleeding heart. Tender rhythm playing its part. Oh, oh, I'm easy to tease. Oh, oh, I'm easy to please. Hold me courageously, sweet honey. I'm not gonna fight for love no more. Trading in my weapons of war. Never been a heart that's felt so sure. He comes and knocking at my door. Ooh, my soldiers and my tanks will be replaced. Oh, no kind of courage finds its place. Military force ready to face. Powerfully peaceful sense of grace. Oh, I'm easy to please. Oh, I'm easy to tease. Hold me courageously, sweet honey. No isagoy el goy jerez. Lo isagoy el goy jerez. לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא ייסגו אל גוי חרב. לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא, I'm gonna take it easy. Gonna take it easy. I'm not gonna fight for love.
I love it. When did you write that? Why?
Why?
When? Why?
I wrote it probably in about 2014, yeah. Well, I wrote it because I had been in lots of relationships where I was trying like too hard. I was like overextending myself. This is a very common issue that I talk to lots of clients about nowadays, where especially I think women, but sometimes men too, kind of are caretakers and over giving and, just yeah, it was kind of this reminder to myself. A lot of my songs have always been like, hey, wake up, to my own self. Just sit back. Like, you can just receive. You don't have to try so hard. And once you don't fight for that love and for that connection, it will come. And it did. Lo and behold.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, 10 years ago, you weren't writing that song for 2020.
No.
For 2023 and 2024.
No.
That message resonates to me too. I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, or if you want to share why it resonates or want me to share, but
yeah, I mean, I think more and more as I think about, like, this is also a personal thing that happened for me, where I was born in the States. My parents were Zionists. They took me over there at a young age and instilled in me this desire to be Israeli and to live there. And not all Israelis that live there and grow up there have the same experience. But for me, like, I had to work very hard at being Israeli enough. And maybe that was being good enough or being loved enough or trying so hard. So even though there was like a sense of belonging, you go there and you're like, oh, this is the biblical, everything. And it was just my soul called out, and there's all this like really deep yearning that happens. But I also worked very, very hard to acquire the language and to acquire the culture. And I kind of always felt behind even after living there for 10 years. And not only that, but, the way that people interact with each other and the tensions that are there. And then the terrorist attacks and the bombings, and then the Gulf War, which we went through it in 1991 as a family, and just over and over. And then being in the army, there's just so much hardship, really, being in Israel or being in Palestine. And so, like, my point is,
you're doing great.
I was like, at a certain point, I could not endure like trying so hard. And I feel like as a culture, I when I've gone back to Israel to visit, I'm like, wow, everybody here is like trying so hard. They're working so hard. They are traumatized like over and over again, and living with that trauma in their body, which is now my profession, to work with people to relieve some of that trauma. But when you are living, this is what happens when I work with children who are living in the home that they're being abused in or being traumatized in. You can help with some coping mechanisms, but you can't actually resolve the trauma until this child has like, so now I'm getting chills just thinking about it all. It's like, how do you really work with the Israelis and the Palestinians that are there living under this kind of traumatic, decades-long trauma? Okay, back to my song is like, we're working so hard because it's just manifesting itself more and more and more. It's like, whoa, what if, could we? I mean, I have no idea. Let me just sit back for a second. Take a breath. Maybe it wouldn't be as hard as it seems. That's my fantastical thinking, probably.
I mean, it can be fantastical, but that doesn't mean it also can't be real.
Yeah.
And it can happen. I was thinking on two different levels too, because in many ways, I think you're giving voice to a lot of the Jewish expression and ethos of today, where a lot of Jews don't necessarily know what their place is. And this is even before October 7th, where a lot of Jews don't necessarily know what their place is. That's partly why I started Own Your Judaism, right? So a lot of Jews don't know what their place is or how to find their place, or feel like they have to prove themselves, right? What's the entrance exam that I need in order to be part of this community? And then certainly after October 7th, we were talking about this before, the kind of dissonance where who am I and where do I belong and how do I hold the things I thought I believed or the things I think I believe now, and I don't even know who to talk with anymore. Right. So on a very personal level, I think you're giving voice to a lot of the contemporary Jewish ethos. And projecting in a way that I'm not allowed to project for anyone who's living in the Middle East right now. Right. Because as much as my heart goes out to everyone in Israel and Palestine and Gaza, the West Bank, and everywhere, like, I'm here in Milwaukee on my couch. Right. You'll let me know if I'm way overstating this, because this is your world more than mine. But when you're immersed in trauma and still the victim of trauma, and in that situation, you're not in a place where you can heal. Hopefully you can cope a little bit. That's what you said. And hopefully you can just get that trauma to stop a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. Just give me a little bit of space. Just take a break.
Some boundaries.
Right. Just try to create any kind of boundaries. And that's very much like, here's what I need you to do, which is real.
Yeah.
And if there were the fantastical and hopefully real space where everyone could step back and say, we don't need boundaries. We're going to step away from the trauma for a moment. We're going to give ourselves some space to heal, give yourself some space to heal, and then hopefully come with a different mindset and a different approach to how do we be in relationship with each other, which is different from here's what you've done to me. And when we're so entrenched in the emotion, the pain, the epigenetic pain, the generational trauma, it's understandable that we're not in a space that we can do that. So again, that's my hope of why we're doing these songs for peace is, in this massive needle, if we can move it a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent and just create a little bit more space, a little bit more openness for stories and for peace and for healing, and step just a hair back from the constant re-traumatization. I don't know if that's a word.
That is a word.
Yeah. Then if we can step a little bit back from that, maybe we can step a little bit more into what maybe naively I really want to believe the vast majority of us just want to be in peace.
Yeah.
With ourselves and with each other. Am I reading too much into what you're saying?
No, I think that's exactly it. It's just then, I start thinking, well, we're here in Milwaukee, but I think more than ever, even though my life has been inextricably linked between Milwaukee or Wisconsin, which like when I'd go to Israel and people would hear I'm from Milwaukee or anywhere, they're like, what the heck? Are there even Jews there? Like, that's just not something that made sense to people. So my life has been there, here and Israel and whatever, but somehow even more so now being back here and seeing the way that the conflict and the war over there is impacting our community locally, and knowing that this is happening across the nation and across the world, that the Jewish community is not okay.
Right.
I just feel like individually people are not okay. People's identities are being really shaken, and people's relationships with friends and with, their spiritual community and their synagogues, their leadership in their synagogues. Like I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, but I think that there's just a lot of conversations that aren't happening. So how are you going to know? Who's thinking what? Who's on your side? It's just now we're just factions, I think.
And we're not comparing trauma. We're not trying to say that what we're going through is the same as, right? But we're still here in our environment, and there's a traumatic impact that this is having on us. And it's okay. We don't necessarily know what to do with it. And in some ways it's not okay because it's coming up on a year and we still don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So this is one space to do something about it.
Yeah. Music.
Do you have another song?
Maybe we'll do one more.
Yeah, let's do one more song.
Let's see.
I can vamp if you want a few moments to think about a song, because we didn't plan this ahead.
I can sing the one that I wrote, which I do want to just pull up the words.
Great. And once again, Sunday, August 4th, you'll be getting a lot more information on Facebook and by email. Sunday, August 4th. Thank you to All Your Judaism for sponsoring Songs for Peace. Yonat will be playing many, 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 many more songs. And I will have the honor of helping invite people to offer any prayer for peace that is coming alive for them in that moment and in that evening.
All right, I'm trying to find it.
No problem.
Oh, no.
I can vamp longer if you need. I mean,
give me one more second.
I think the true secret of being a rabbi is using a lot of words to say very, very little and sounding professional doing it.
I have found, I will say that, like, for some reason, like, being in these contexts, I'm more nervous and I feel more reliant on, I'm looking down a lot, and I'm more, because it's not just a performance. It's like my feelings are so raw. A lot of times when I perform, I'm like, I've digested the feelings of the thing. I'm not exposing anything that's not already been processed. And with this, like, it does not feel complete at all. So it's
right.
I'm like looking down at the stuff.
Right.
But this song came out meaning it just gets like birthed somehow in, I think, like I said, November or so.
Amazing.
And I'm gonna use your knee.
Please.
Here.
Do you want me to hold it?
No, it's okay.
Okay. I haven't heard this yet, and I only heard the first one about an hour ago.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, can you hold it? Yeah.
Sure.
Right there. Okay.
Here, higher up.
Yeah, like that.
How's that?
That's good.
Great. Can you see the words?
Kind of far. Okay.
I gotta get into a holding it steady position. Hold on.
Mind learning, bellies churning, hearts yearning, unfertile holy ground, truth chilling, too much killing, graves filling, unfertile holy ground. Milk is sour, honey lost its power to sweeten the year. Hope is broken when all that's spoken is grief and fear. Adam al-ha Adama, Dam al-ha Adama, Dam Adam, Dam Dam Adam al-ha Adama. Lights dimming, eyes brimming, tears winning, unfertile holy ground, truth chilling, too much killing, graves filling, unfertile holy ground. Milk is sour, honey lost its power to sweeten the year. Hope is broken when all that's spoken is grief and fear. Adam al-ha Adama, Dam al-ha Adama, Dam Adam, Dam Dam al-ha Adama. Blood on the fertile holy ground.
So here's my hope, my tikva and bracha and blessing from that song, which is, may the sanctity of life and the sanctity from our faith tradition continue to take root both in the land of Israel and in the Middle East, and that peace continue to be our deepest hope and the true embodiment of what it means to be a holy people and a holy nation.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yonat, thank you so much for coming over for what was supposed to be for like 15 minutes to record a song and staying for an hour. To those of you who joined, thank you for joining. I know some of you joined for a few minutes here or there, and we hope that you can join on Sunday evening, August 4th. More information coming. Thank you for creating this wonderful space.
תודה רבה.
בבקשה.